You know you've entered rarefied air when the local corner shop stocks vintage Dom Perignon and the neighborhood watch consists of armed diplomatic forces. But then again, this isn't just any London gaff. This is the wealthiest neighborhood in the world, smack dab in the middle of our sumptuous capital. Undoubtedly, they say money can't buy happiness, but on this particular half-mile of London soil, it certainly seems to be giving it an exceptional try. Here, even the pigeons appear to have graduated from finishing school, and I'm fairly certain the rain checks the price tags before deciding where to fall. Now, most travel guides on YouTube will tell you about London's loud money addresses, Mayfair, Belgravia, Knightsbridge, but there's one area they tend to whisper about, if they mention it at all. A place where house numbers are replaced by embassy flags, where property viewings require more security clearance than most military bases, and where the term exclusive goes to retire when it feels it's no longer exclusive enough. In today's episode of Sir Luxury Travel, we're taking you on a private tour of the most expensive neighborhood on planet Earth and maybe even Mars. Welcome to Kensington Palace Gardens, darling. Do try to keep up. Welcome to Kensington Palace Gardens, the wealthiest neighborhood in the world. It's a place where the term exclusive enclave feels about as inadequate as calling the crown jewels some nice accessories. You see, this half-mile stretch of London real estate, affectionately dubbed Billionaires' Row, isn't just wealthy. It's the kind of place where even the trees probably have trust funds. Picture, if you will, a street where the average home price casually sits at £36 million, though that might just cover the cost of renovating the servants' quarters. Indeed, the numbers here defy imagination as much as basic economics. The average property commands a modest £36 million. Rather reminds me of my first London pied-à-terre, though that was back when 30 million actually meant something, a figure that's barely budged since 2020. Each square meter costs more than most London flats. Honestly, I've paid more for a decent bottle of Bordeaux, commanding an eye-watering £84,000. Just ask Foxton's founder John Hunt, who casually declined a £300 million offer for his property in 2012. Even Roman Abramovich's £90 million purchase in 2011 feels almost quaint by today's standards. Here, Victorian and Edwardian mansions hide behind wrought-iron gates, like aristocratic debutantes playing hard to get, while immaculately manicured lawns create the sort of green buffer zone that makes regular garden hedges look positively pedestrian. And of course, the real estate game here operates on a different playing field entirely. Take steel tycoon Lakshmi Mittal, who picked up his little pied-à-terre for a mere £57 million back in 2004, a property that's since tripled in value, though who among us hasn't had a real estate investment or two do that? Or consider Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich, who clearly thought £90 million was a reasonable price to pay for a spot on London's most coveted street. But the true stroke of genius is that none of these billionaires actually own their homes outright. The Crown Estate holds the freehold for the entire street, graciously offering long-term leases of 90 to 125 years, because nothing says exclusive quite like paying hundreds of millions for a really, really long rental agreement. And life behind these storied walls unfolds like a how-to guide in luxury living. Harrods and Harvey Nichols stand ready to fulfill any shopping whim, while Sloane Street's parade of flagship stores, Hermès, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Cartier, ensures residents never have to wear the same outfit twice unless they want to. Security is indubitably paramount. Armed police checkpoints at either end of the street ensure that uninvited guests don't accidentally wander into this rarefied air, though given the property prices, most people couldn't afford to accidentally wander in anyway. The proximity to Kensington Palace adds that final sprinkle of prestige, because why settle for being merely wealthy when you can be royal adjacent? Residents might occasionally glimpse actual royalty coming and going, though they're far too sophisticated to act impressed. But here's the truly fascinating part. This street didn't just wake up one morning and decide to become the world's most expensive address. No, the path to such astronomical property values is paved with intrigue, power plays, and the kind of historical twists that would make a chess grandmaster's head spin, though that's a story that deserves its own chapter. Forget everything you know about real estate prices. When it comes to Kensington Palace Gardens, we're operating in a parallel universe where basic mathematics takes a holiday. The average property here commands nearly £36 million, a figure that makes most luxury penthouses look like they're priced for a garage sale. To put that into perspective, though why bother with perspective when we're talking about billionaire mathematics, the typical home here costs 156 times more than the average UK property. Rather makes one feel sorry for the estate agents trying to find comparable properties for their listings, though I suppose similar to the palace down the road might suffice. But don't rush to call your broker just yet. Getting your hands on one of these properties is about as simple as borrowing the crown jewels for a weekend soiree. The buying process? Well, that's where things get properly interesting. First, you'll need at least £100 million lying around, though that's just to get your foot in the door, mind you. Then comes the vetting process, which makes joining the most exclusive private clubs look like signing up for a library card. Most sales happen off-market, rather like the finest wines never making it to the shop shelves. And even if you do manage to find a property, you'll have to contend with the Crown Estate's leasehold system. It's rather like joining the world's most expensive club, only to discover your membership needs renewal every century or so. Global competition? Well, Manhattan's Billionaires' Row tries its best, bless them, and Hong Kong's The Peak puts up an admirable effort. Even Monaco's La Voto district makes a sporting attempt, but there's something about having armed guards at both ends of your street that just adds that extra touch of exclusivity, though I find they're quite pleasant once they get to know you. The street has become something of a global wealth magnet, attracting fortunes from Russia, China, and the Middle East faster than a Rolls-Royce dealership during bonus season. Though speaking of what happens behind these prestigious walls, that's where things get really interesting, but perhaps we should save those details for our next chapter. When they say security is tight on Kensington Palace Gardens, they're not talking about a retired constable with a flashlight. We're dealing with armed police checkpoints at both ends of the street, rather like having the Queen's Guard as your personal doormen, though with considerably more firepower. The Diplomatic Protection Group officers stand watch day and night, presumably wondering if guarding billionaires is more exciting than their previous assignments. I've found them quite charming once they've memorized your license plate, though I do miss the days when one could simply pop by for impromptu caviar tastings without showing identification. Victorian gaslight streetlights cast a gentle glow along the half-mile stretch, creating an atmosphere that makes modern LED lighting look positively pedestrian. Though I suspect even the street lamps here have better security clearance than most government officials. But here's where things get deliciously controversial. Many of these magnificent mansions stand empty most of the year. It's rather like owning a Rolls-Royce collection and never taking them for a spin. Across London, nearly 40% of properties worth between £1 and £5 million are underused, with that figure jumping to a rather shocking 64% for homes above £5 million. The phenomenon has a rather clever name, buy to leave, though personally I've always thought it should be called buy to brag. After all, what's the point of a £36 million address if you're not going to mention it at dinner parties? Even the Crown Estate has found itself in a bit of a pickle over these vacant venues. There's been talk of higher taxes on empty properties, though I imagine for most residents here, that's about as concerning as a parking ticket would be for the rest of us. The irony hasn't escaped notice that parts of Kensington Palace itself stand empty, though calling any room in a palace empty feels rather like calling the Sahara a bit sandy. Some suggest opening these spaces to the public, which would certainly make the morning commute more interesting for the neighbours. It's all created quite the stir among housing activists, who seem to think these properties should be used for something as mundane as living in them. Though I suppose that's rather the point of a house, even if yours happens to have more security than most small nations. But if you think the controversy over empty mansions is intriguing, wait until you hear about the secret gems of Kensington Palace Gardens, from boutiques to restaurants, in our final chapter. While the rest of London shouts about its attractions, the hidden gems around Kensington Palace Gardens prefer to murmur their delights in perfectly polished whispers. Take the Orangery, for instance, a place where afternoon tea isn't just a meal, it's a royal audience with Victoria sponge cake. Though I must say, watching tourists attempt to navigate the proper tea etiquette is almost as entertaining as the pastries. Almost. Then there's Minjiang, perched like an eagle's nest on the 10th floor of the Royal Garden Hotel. Their Beijing duck is carved tableside with the kind of precision usually reserved for diamond cutting. Though between us, the view over Kensington Gardens makes even mediocre dim sum taste, like it has a Michelin star, not that anything here is remotely mediocre. Speaking of Michelin stars, Kitchen W8 wears its accolade with the kind of understated confidence that only comes from knowing you don't need to boast, rather like having $1 billion in the bank and still using last season's iPhone, though I've never been quite that restrained myself. For those seeking retail therapy of the most exclusive kind, Harrods and Harvey Nichols stand ready in nearby Knightsbridge, though calling them mere department stores feels like calling a Rolls-Royce a car. I find their food halls particularly therapeutic after a trying morning of declining party invitations. The truly initiated know to slip into Orsini vintage for those one-of-a-kind pieces that make even seasoned fashionistas whisper in reverence. Though I still maintain my great-aunt's closet had better Chanel, but then again, she did attend Coco's personal fittings. For a truly exclusive experience, the private morning tours of Kensington Palace offer the sort of access that makes regular visitors feel like they've been watching through the windows. The sunken garden, with its Diana, Princess of Wales statue, provides a moment of poignant reflection, but I've noticed even the flowers seem to arrange themselves more elegantly here. And the Italian gardens? Well, they make most Roman villas look like they could use a bit of landscaping advice. But perhaps the most delicious secret of all isn't found in any guidebook or whispered about in exclusive clubs. It's in knowing that for every gem mentioned here, there are dozens more hidden behind unmarked doors and discreet facades, though if you have to ask where they are, well, perhaps stick to the tourist spots. After all, in a neighborhood where privacy is the ultimate luxury, some secrets are worth more than the properties themselves. And now, I'd love to see you in the comments. Have you visited Kensington Palace Gardens before, or is it now on your bucket list after having watched this video? I'm waiting for your thoughts, so thanks again for joining me for another episode of Sir Luxury Travel. Ta-ta until the next one.